There is a quiet moment, often overlooked. A child sits alone, and yet not alone at all. Eyes focused on something unseen, a soft voice responding to no one we can hear. To an adult, it feels confusing, sometimes even unsettling. But to the child, it is real, comforting, alive. In those invisible conversations, something deeper is unfolding, not imagination as mere play, but a language of the mind still untouched by doubt. Because what looks like nothing to the outside world may be everything inside theirs. It usually begins quietly. A glance across the room, a pause in play, a soft whisper directed toward empty space. From the outside, it looks like nothing is there. But the child responds as if someone is listening, as if someone understands. There is laughter sometimes. Other times, small disagreements. Moments of comfort that seem to come from nowhere. To an adult, this can feel unfamiliar. The instinct is to question it, to gently interrupt, to bring the child back into what is visible and known. But for the child, there is no confusion, no sense of pretending. The presence feels real, not because it exists in the world, but because it exists in experience. And in that space, something important is happening. The child is not escaping reality. They are expanding it. Long before logic becomes firm, the mind remains open. In early childhood, the world is not yet divided into what is real and what is imagined. Everything blends together: thoughts, feelings, sounds, and stories. This is where imaginary companions begin. Not from emptiness, but from fullness. A child feels deeply, but does not always have the words to explain it. Loneliness may appear without warning. Curiosity grows faster than understanding. And so, the mind creates something gentle, something that listens without judgment, something that stays. It is not a conscious decision. There is no moment where the child chooses to invent. Instead, the companion emerges, shaped by emotion, formed by need, guided by imagination. Sometimes it reflects a friend they wish they had. Sometimes it becomes a voice of comfort. Other times, it simply shares the silence. In a world that often feels too big, this presence makes it feel closer. Beneath the softness of imagination, something precise is unfolding. The child's mind is not simply playing, it is practicing. In early development, the brain is still learning how to understand others, how to read emotions, how to respond, how to exist in connection. An imaginary companion becomes a safe rehearsal space. Here, the child can create conversations, test reactions, explore feelings without consequence. This is not confusion between real and unreal. It is flexibility, the mind moving freely between both. Psychologically, it reflects a growing ability called symbolic thinking, the capacity to let one thing stand in for another, to give shape to what cannot be seen. Through this process, the child strengthens emotional awareness. They learn empathy, negotiation, comfort, all within a world they control. What appears invisible from the outside is, in fact, a complex and intelligent process within. For the child, the line is soft, barely there. What is imagined can still be felt, and what is felt becomes real in its own way. But for the adult observing, this space can feel uncertain. There is a quiet discomfort in not being able to see what the child sees, a need to define it, to separate truth from illusion. Yet the child is not lost between worlds. They are moving through both with ease. The imaginary companion becomes a place where emotions can exist freely. Fear can speak without being named. Joy can expand without limits. And sometimes, hidden feelings appear through this presence, feelings that might otherwise remain silent. The tension does not belong to the child. It belongs to the observer, because what cannot be measured or proven often feels difficult to trust. But within that invisible space, the child is making sense of something very real. If the invisible could be translated, it would sound familiar. The imaginary companion is not random. It carries pieces of the child's inner world, spoken in a voice that feels safe enough to hear. A quiet fear may appear as a worried friend. A hidden wish may take the shape of someone who always agrees. Loneliness may soften itself into company. Through these small conversations, the child begins to express what cannot yet be explained directly. There is no pressure here. No need to find the right words. The companion listens without interruption, responds without judgment, and in doing so, it becomes more than imagination. It becomes a mirror, not reflecting the outside world, but the emotional landscape within. What the child says to this presence is often what they are still learning to say to others. And in that quiet exchange, something essential is being understood, slowly, gently, and in their own time. It does not end suddenly. There is no final goodbye, no moment where the child decides it is over. Instead, the presence begins to quiet. The conversations grow shorter. The pauses between them stretch a little longer, until one day, the voice is no longer needed. Not because it was never real, but because its purpose has been fulfilled. As the child grows, the outside world becomes easier to navigate. Words come more naturally. Connections feel more stable. What once had to be created within can now be found beyond. And so, the invisible companion gently fades. Not lost, but integrated. Its comfort becomes part of the child's own voice. Its understanding becomes part of how they see others. Nothing disappears completely. It simply changes form, becoming something quieter, but still deeply present within. Somewhere along the way, the world becomes solid, edges sharpen, rules settle in, and slowly, the invisible begins to disappear. Not because it was never there, but because it is no longer allowed to stay. The ability to feel presence without proof, to speak without fear of being misunderstood, to imagine without needing explanation, quietly fades into the background. And yet, something remains. In moments of deep thought, in silent conversations within the mind, in the way emotions are still shaped into words before they are spoken, echoes of that early world still exist, just in a different form. Imaginary friends were never just companions. They were a way of understanding, a bridge between feeling and expression. And perhaps what children eventually leave behind is not imagination itself, but the freedom to trust it completely.